Okay, let's dive straight in. The speed at which AI tools like, ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, the way they've just burst onto the scene, it's created a real whirlwind, hasn't it? Especially for universities.
Oh, absolutely. It feels like just yesterday, late 2022, ChatGPT landed, and boom, this massive leap in AI capabilities.
Hugely.
And it really shifted things, particularly for Australian universities. I mean, between 2023 and 2025, these tools went from being interesting novelties to being, well, deeply embedded in student life.
Yeah, changing how students learn and, I guess, forcing universities to completely rethink assessments, academic practices.
Exactly, which is what we're digging into today. We've gone through quite a bit of material policy docs, research papers, university guidelines, trying to get a handle on how Aussie unis have navigated all this.
Right. So the focus is really on how they've adapted assessment specifically and their sort of core academic ways of doing things because of AI.
That's the mission. We want to give you a clear picture of the main strategies, the big challenges, and, the ethical stuff that shaped how AI assessment is being integrated here. Cut through the noise, basically.
But to the important bits.
Yeah. And just to give you a sense of the scale, get this. A survey in late 2024 across 4 Australian universities found 83% of students were using AI tools.
83%. Wow.
Huge, right? And it wasn't just playing around. 44% said they used them weekly or even daily. Makes you wonder how ready universities really were for that speed.
No kidding. So what were they actually doing with these tools? What kind of study tasks?
Well, the survey broke it down. Top use, 79% was just asking questions, getting information. Then 68% using it to generate text.
Like essays.
Potentially, or parts of them. Then 51% for analyzing data, 38% creating images, and 34% even producing code. So pretty broad academic use.
Sounds like it's really woven into the fabric of being a student now.
Yeah.
But it can't all be positive, right? What are the students themselves saying? Mixed feelings.
Definitely mixed. On one hand, you've got 64% saying, yeah, AI has real learning benefits, makes work easier, helps them get unstuck, that kind of thing. That's a strong positive signal.
But there's always a but.
There is a big one. 71% also think it makes cheating easier. That's a major worry. And maybe the most telling part, 40% admitted using AI on assessments when they weren't supposed to.
40%. Wow. So they see the upside, but they're also really aware of the integrity risks.
Exactly. Which brings us right to the universities. Students jumped on this fast, mixed feelings and all. So how did the institutions react? It must have been, well, rapid response time needed.
Yeah, unprecedented speed, I imagine. What were those first steps like early 2023?
Pretty reactive initially, as you'd expect. Some unis did try to block ChatGPT on campus networks. Didn't last long, obviously.
Like trying to hold back the tide.
Pretty much. And we saw some places, as the University of Sydney noted happened in some universities, reverting to old school methods, pen and paper exams, maybe more oral exams. But everyone knew those were just stopgaps.
Right. Short-term fixes. So what came next? More structured approaches.
Yeah, the traffic light system became really common. Red, amber, green for AI use. It gave everyone a clearer framework.
Okay, like a guide for students and staff.
Exactly. The University of Wollongong had a good example. Green was for stuff like basic spell check, Grammarly tools, already widely accepted, low risk.
Standard tools, okay.
Then yellow or amber. This was for using AI for things like brainstorming, maybe checking grammar, rephrasing bits. And this is key only if it was acknowledged, transparent use.
And red was totally off limits.
Red was the big no-no. Things like getting AI to write your first draft, doing heavy editing in an academic style, using it for research summaries without doing the work yourself. That was straight into academic misconduct territory.
Because it bypasses the actual learning, I suppose.
Precisely. It showed the complexity, though, trying to set clear rules when the tech is moving so fast.
Makes sense. So beyond just usage categories, how did the actual policies change? The formal academic integrity rules.
That was the next big wave. Universities had to quickly update their definitions of misconduct. Sydney Uni, for instance, they amended their policy back in late 2022. By early 23, they were giving out template wording for course outlines on how to acknowledge AI.
So the core message was?
The core message everywhere became, submitting AI work as your own, without saying so, is plagiarism. Simple as that, really. Just like copying from a book.
And this was pretty universal across Australia.
Yeah, ANU, the Australian National University, updated their integrity rule too. Emphasized that the usual principle citing your sources now applied squarely to AI. If AI use was allowed in an assessment, you had to declare it, acknowledge how you used it. That became the baseline everywhere.
Okay, declaring it. How did that work practically?
Yep.
Checkboxes on assignments?
Often, yeah. Cover sheets, declaration forms. Wollongong's template, for example, had specific checkboxes. Did you use AI for brainstorming, proofreading, editing? And submitting that form meant you were confirming you'd used it responsibly and, crucially, attach the AI output or prompts if required.
Making it transparent.
Yeah. Treating AI like another resource you have to cite.
Right. Now, the elephant in the room, AI detection tools. Pernitin's detector came out pretty fast, April 2023. How did universities react to that?
Yes. Huge divergence there. Some jumped right in. Melbourne, UNSW Sydney, Western Sydney Uni enabled it early. They were hoping it would be, silver bullet.
But others were more hesitant.
Very hesitant. Many delayed or just refused to use it. Big concerns about, accuracy, lack of independent testing, the risk of false positives accusing innocent students.
What were some specific worries?
Deakin Uni, for instance, pointed out they hadn't verified Turnitin's claims. Plus, the detector was probably trained on older AI models, so how good would it be against newer stuff? Sydney Uni was quite vocal, saying they wouldn't use it without proper testing. Their focus, they said, was more on teaching students to use AI properly because, that's a future workplace skill.
Makes sense. What was ANU's take?
ANU actually trialed it in 2023 and then disabled it.
Disabled it entirely.
They found it unreliable. Too many false positives and false negatives missing actual AI content. Plus, they made the very good point that detection tech just can't keep up with AI development. It's an arms race. You can't win that way.
So relying on detectors was seen as problematic. Where did that leave things by, say, 2024?
A strong consensus emerged. You can't penalize a student just based on a detector score. The University of Queensland's policy was clear on this: no misconduct finding, no mark deduction, based solely on the tool. You needed other evidence.
Like what?
Like finding made-up references in the bibliography, inconsistencies in the writing style compared to previous work, that sort of thing. It put the focus back on academic judgment, not just trusting the machine.
Which feels more educationally sound, maybe less about policing.
I think that was the idea. Avoid false accusations, focus on prevention, education, and better assessment design.
Speaking of education, it sounds like a lot of effort went into training staff and informing students.
Huge effort. Alongside policies, there were massive training initiatives. Internal task forces popped up everywhere. Melbourne Uni set up a high-level generative AI task force, GAAP, led by a deputy vice chancellor. Very top-down coordination.
What did these task forces actually do? Produce resources?
Yeah, Melbourne created an AI at Melbourne website full of guidelines. They also published these AI principles, emphasizing things like human accountability, transparency, engaging productively with AI.
And for students, how do they get the message?
Melbourne integrated AI guidance into their compulsory academic integrity modules for all new students, covered referencing AI, Turnitin info, consequences of misuse. They even updated the declarations students make when submitting assignments to include AI rules.
So embedding it right from the start. What about other unis?
Similar things happening elsewhere. ANU provided downloadable slide decks for lecturers to use in class, making sure expectations were clear, covered limitations of AI, bias, the need to verify information, and the unacceptability of cheating with it. Consistent messaging was key.
We also heard some universities started providing institutional access to AI platforms themselves. Why do that?
That's right. ANU gave access to Microsoft Copilot, UNSW, to a private Azure OpenAI instance. Two main reasons: equity and safety.
Equity how?
Well, the best AI tools cost money. Not all students can afford subscriptions. Providing access levels to the playing field avoids creating a disadvantage. Sydney Uni's leadership mentioned affordability as a concern, too.
And safety.
Using external free AI tools carries risks. Students might share personal data, sensitive research information. By providing sanctioned, often more private institutional platforms, universities could mitigate those risks. ANU specifically warned about data issues with outside tools while highlighting the protections of their provided Copilot.
Okay, so that covers the broad institutional responses. Let's maybe look closer at a few specific examples. You mentioned Melbourne, Monash, and ANU as leading the way.
Yeah, they offer good illustrations of proactive approaches. Melbourne, as we said, very top-down with GAT. They were clear this wasn't just about tweaking things, but part of a bigger assessment reform agenda.
And their AI principles.
Yeah.
What was the core idea there?
Balancing integrity and excellence with, exploring AI's potential. Supporting AI literacy for everyone, ensuring fair access, all within a secure framework. That guided their actions.
And embedding AI info in the first-year integrity module seems like a smart move.
Crucial. Setting expectations from day one, plus the updated submission declaration keeps it front of mind.
What about support for the academics at Melbourne? How do they help staff adapt?
Their Center for Study of Higher Education was really active, created online resources on assessment, AI, and academic integrity, ran workshops in designing AI-resistant tasks, using AI in teaching, all building towards that big assessment reform program planned for 2025, explicitly linked to generative AI.
So they're really gearing up for fundamental changes.
Looks like it. They've already piloted things like weighting in-person components, more heavily supervised labs, presentations ensuring some assessment is definitely unassisted, plus those reflective essays asking students to explain their process, including AI use.
Right, adding that metacognitive layer.
Yeah.
What about Monash? They seem to focus on responsible use early on.
Yes, Monash was very quick off the mark in 2023. Formed their task force in Feb 23. A key move was formally amending their assessment and academic integrity policy to explicitly include AI.
How did that work day to day?
Very systematically. Every single unit had to educate students on AI rules, designate each assessment in the LMS, the learning management system, as fully open, partially restricted, or AI prohibited.
Wow, tagging every assessment.
Yeah, quite detailed. And if AI was allowed, acknowledgement was mandatory. Unauthorized use, straight to misconduct procedures. That systematic tagging provided real clarity.
Sounds like a lot of work for instructors. Did Monash support them?
Definitely. They had resources like the Teach HQ page on AI and assessment. It guided staff on redesigning tasks, even suggesting they test prompts in ChatGPT themselves to see if the AI could ace the assessment.
Kind of like stress testing your own assignments.
Exactly. Treat ChatGPT as a benchmark, maybe even an adversary, to find weaknesses in the assessment design. Push staff towards tasks needing more critical thinking, things AI can't easily do.
But Monash wasn't just about stopping misuse, right? They explored AI's learning potential, too.
Absolutely. Embedded AI literacy training created a quick start guide to AI, and they launched some really interesting experimental projects, personalized course advisor chatbots, AI coaching for teamwork, AI simulations for things like marketing campaigns or virtual clinical practice, really embracing the potential upsides.
Fascinating. Okay, finally, ANU. Their initial approach sounded more decentralized.
It was initially more autonomy for course conveners early on, but they soon saw the need for consistency and developed their 6 institutional AI principles by mid-2023.
What were the headlines for ANU's principles?
Things like upholding integrity, encouraging critical engagement with AI, clear guidance, AI literacy support, equitable access, and using their own internal expertise. A solid framework.
And we know they were firm on not relying on detection tools.
Very firm. After ditching the Turnitin trial, their focus shifted heavily to what they called robust measures, meaning assessment design.
What kinds of designs did ANU favor?
Things harder for AI alone. Nested assessments showing work over time, practical lab work, placements, timed in-class tasks, oral presentations, good old invigilated exams. Investing in those methods.
On how do they educate their community?
Workshops, an AI quick start guide for staff, funding for AI teaching projects. They even built AI into their graduate employability framework, recognizing you need to understand AI for the workplace now. Piloted tutorials where students used AI, then reflected on it.
That reflection piece seems important.
Very. And their communication was clear. Student-friendly guides and syllabi, FAQs, templates for citing AI using standard styles like APA 7, treating AI output like any other source you need to credit.
So different paths, but Melbourne, Monash, ANU, all aimed for responsible integration, keeping integrity central.
That's the common thread, and many other unis were doing similar things, showing a real sector-wide effort.
Okay, so policies changed, practices evolved. The logical consequence is assessment itself had to change. Big time. What are the main shifts we're seeing there? How are unis assessing students differently now?
The big trend is definitely towards assessments that are either harder for AI to do well on or that deliberately include AI in a structured way. It's about focusing on higher order skills and making tasks more authentic.
Break that down a bit. Higher order skills, authentic tasks.
Higher order skills mean things beyond just recalling facts, applying knowledge, thinking critically, being creative, reflecting on your learning. Things current AI isn't great at faking convincingly. Authentic tasks are assessments that mirror what graduates actually do in the real world in their jobs.
So less generic essays, more practical application.
Exactly. Take Your Essay, the regulator, has been pushing this. encouraging tasks where students might analyze AI's role in their field or use local data AI wouldn't have access to. Think case studies with unique data, open-ended projects, hands-on lab work, interview-based research, things that need genuine human input.
We also heard about more multi-stage assignments and oral assessments. How do they help counter AI misuse?
They give a window into the student's actual understanding and process. A viva voce, an oral defense of written work, lets you probe deeper than the text alone. Sydney Uni flags orals as a secure method. Multi-stage tasks, like submitting drafts or keeping a learning journal, showed the development of ideas over time. Much harder to just drop in an AI-generated final piece if it doesn't match the earlier work.
And the reflection component.
Asking students to reflect on how they learned, the challenges, their approach that adds a personal dimension AI struggles with.
What about going back to basics? More supervised, in-class exams?
We are seeing some of that, yeah, especially for core knowledge, high-stakes stuff. Universities like Queensland and Adelaide have reportedly upped their in-person supervised assessments. Sydney's two-lane approach sums it up. One lane for secured in-person assessment of learning, and another for unsupervised assessment for learning, where AI use might even be assumed.
Balancing security with open learning.
Trying to find that balance, yeah.
Okay, now, the really interesting one. AI in the loop assessments. What are those about?
These are quite innovative. Instead of banning AI, you deliberately build it into the task and assess how well the student uses and critiques it.
So, teaching them how to work with AI.
Precisely. Maybe a law student uses AI to draft a memo, but the assessment is on how well they identify its errors and improve it, adding commentary. Or a marketing student is assessed on crafting effective AI prompts and reflecting on the ethical issues.
Shifting the focus to evaluation and critical use.
Exactly. Engineering projects might require using AI for a part, then documenting its limitations. It acknowledges AI is here to stay and teaches intelligent engagement.
And we also mentioned more reflections, capstones, portfolios. How do they fit?
They all emphasized the individual student's journey and demonstrated competence over time. Oral or written reflections demand personal insight. Capstone projects, being big final year syntheses, inherently require original work. Portfolios showcase growth and consistency, all harder to fake with AI.
And universities are still making sure students learn the absolute fundamentals without AI help.
Definitely. Identifying those core concepts, medical anatomy, basic engineering principles, and testing them in controlled, AI-free settings remains crucial for qualification integrity.
Makes sense. But all these new assessment types, orals, more in-person stuff, do they raise practical issues? Logistics, equity.
Oh, absolutely. Universities know this. More oral exams mean more staff time, scheduling challenges. Increased in-person exams need suitable venues, invigilation. There's a resource cost. And crucially, they have to ensure these new formats don't disadvantage students with disabilities, for example. Accessibility needs careful consideration. Staff also need training to design and mark these new assessments effectively.
So it's not just a policy shift, it's a pedagogical and operational one too.
A big one. But the goal seems to be this balanced model, Sydney's two lanes idea, again, mixing secure and open assessments. And interestingly, this whole AI disruption seems to be pushing universities towards better assessment practices overall, more authentic, more focused on deep learning.
Like that example of replacing a generic essay with a multi-part project involving interviews, reports, videos, and an oral defense.
Exactly. A much richer assessment, prompted, ironically, by the need to adapt to AI.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Policies, case studies, assessment changes. Let's look towards the future now. What's the strategic roadmap for universities continuing to navigate this?
Well, looking back at 2023 to 2025, you could say it was a real stress test for adaptability. And honestly, Australian universities generally responded pretty vigorously, quite forward-looking compared to some places globally, partly thanks to coordinated efforts through TechUSA.
Started reactive but became more strategic.
Yeah, by 2024, the mindset shifted from just banning or detecting towards thinking strategically, how can we integrate this thoughtfully? Monesh's simulations, Sydney's AI literacy push are examples.
Yeah.
But, no room for complacency.
What are the key things unis need to keep doing strategically?
A few big ones. 1, keep embedding AI literacy for everyone, staff and students. Make sure people know how to use it well, ethically.
Okay.
2, keep redesigning assessments strategically. Focus on human skills, authentic tasks, Don't just tweak old formats.
3.
Maintain rigor and fairness. Use that mix of secure and open assessments. Apply rules consistently. Equity is vital.
Sure.
Leverage AI for good where possible. Look for ways it can genuinely improve education, personalized feedback, accessibility tools, learning analytics, but carefully, thoughtfully.
5.
Keep fostering that culture of integrity, open conversations about honesty, why the rules are what they are.
6.
Collaboration. Keep sharing what works, what doesn't across the sector via TechUSF, maybe even internationally. Monitor and adapt. This isn't a one-off fix. AI keeps changing, student use keeps changing. Universities have to stay agile.
It sounds like the sector mostly avoided the trap of moving too slowly, but also managed not to overreact too much.
Generally, yes. By 2025, most had policies, many were piloting new assessments. The risk now is probably complacency, making sure those changes really bed down across all courses, rather than just being pockets of innovation. Over-reliance on flawed detection seems to have been largely avoided, thankfully.
So wrapping up, it feels like Australian higher ed is entering a new phase, trying to make integrity and innovation coexist with AI.
That's the goal. Turning a potential crisis into a chance to actually improve learning, improve graduate preparedness for an AI-infused world. It's about producing graduates who can not just use AI, but think critically about it, work alongside it, ethically and effectively.
So to quickly recap our deep dive, Australian universities, faced with the AI explosion, have moved fast. Policies, assessment redesign, grappling with ethics. The focus shifted from stop AI to integrate AI smartly while protecting integrity.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. How will AI continue to evolve and reshape universities beyond 2025? And what part will today's students, the first generation learning with these tools so intensely, play in shaping that future?
Definitely something to think about. And if you want to explore the specific policies and research we touched on, do check out the sources link with this deep dive.